Welcome back. Well, things seem to be looking up. That's as South Africa's jobless rate dropped to 32.7% in the fourth quarter of 2022. Despite the somewhat upbeat news, youth unemployment remains quite high, sitting at 43.4%. Now, this is a major concern with the group between the 15 to 34 age range accounts for over half of the country's employable population. And joining me now as we discuss the initiatives and plans put in place to tackle youth unemployment is the COO of the Youth Unemployment Service, Leanne Emery Hunter. Thank you so much for your time, Leanne. Now, of course, looking at those fourth quarter employment figures that we got today, what picture does that paint for the youth unemployment dynamics?
So I think, it's always good to celebrate good news. There have been 169,000 more employed people entering the economy, which is obviously something to celebrate. But I think you mentioned earlier that the stats of unemployed youth in South Africa between the ages of 15 and 34 sits at around 45%. If you look at the expanded definition, because we really believe that youth should be actively seeking work in the economy, it's closer to 56%. So almost 2 in 3 young people in South Africa are currently jobless. And if you think about a future in South Africa not having 2 in 3 young people economically active and able to participate in the economy is dire news for South Africa, for our businesses, for our communities. And so that's why the Youth Employment Service, while celebrating this good news, has not stopped our mission to work with the private sector to create opportunities for youth to enter the job market. So really, it's trying to break this unemployment trap that so many youth find themselves in.
And that's the thing, because you talk about the unemployment in the youth cluster, using the extended definition as 56%. And you mentioned that in that there are those that are not actively looking for work. What are the barriers there? And are there some that maybe seem impenetrable?
I mean, South Africa obviously has a really complex economic landscape, and I think we're still dealing with massive structural challenges and youth that are essentially locked out of the economy. So if it's spatial inequality, access to internet, we know the cost of job seeking is very high, education levels, I think of the youth unemployed in South Africa, around 50% don't have a matric, I think is kind of the stats that we're sitting at the moment. So we really are trying to find ways to break that trap. There's so many barriers, and often youth just need that first work opportunity, and that's what YES does. So we work with the private sector to try and break that trap where I can't get experience without a job and I can't get a job without experience. So if a young person is able to enter the economy, have a 12-month work experience, that makes them immediately 3 times more employable. And often the case is that, the economy that's creating jobs in South Africa, if you look around, if you just drive through Sandton, you can see that it's professional services, banking, financial sector, whereas the youth that are coming through our economy are not necessarily skilled for those kinds of jobs. So it's trying to find ways to work with the private sector to place youth in jobs where they're able to enter the market and break that trap. And that's what really we're trying to do.
I'm just wondering, how receptive is the youth to future-facing jobs and new ways of working, including the gig economy? And is there enough information and education on it?
So, sorry, please won't you repeat the question?
So I'm just wondering, because of course now there's so many changes that are happening in the work environment, where there are new ways of working, there are future-facing jobs, new skills that people should acquire for an economy that's structurally changing. And I'm wondering how receptive the youth is to those jobs, including the gig economy, and if there's enough information and education on it.
So I think, in terms of being receptive, I think youth are naturally digitally more savvy than previous generations, and I think there's a massive appetite to hustle and to really to get into jobs. Often the issue is that there aren't enough opportunities available. So it's really about creating those opportunities, finding, creating the demand, and then trying to find ways for youth to get skilled into those positions in creative ways. So for example, at the Youth Employment Service, we will work with the private sector, put youth in a 1-year drone training program or a coding program where it's essentially a bridge into being able to take on these future-facing roles. Even things like a barrister, that's a really exciting job for a young person. In terms of education and information, I think there is a lot of education and information out there, but it's also about access to this. A lot of the young people in South Africa don't necessarily have the access that everybody would like them to have, and we know that the cost of Wi-Fi, the cost of internet access, etc., is difficult. So it's really about an ecosystem that can make job seeking and information as easily accessible as possible.
Just lastly, we have run out of time, Leanne, but I just want to know, with all the initiatives that you are currently undergoing, yes, is a social compact that really is in a position where government and the private sector and labor can work together to create opportunities and experiences, work experience for young people. But because of the structural issues that we have, would you say that kind of makes it difficult for you to make a significant dent in that unemployment figure?
We are about to celebrate our 100,000 very soon. We're watching the clock. 100,000 work opportunities created through the private sector in 3 years, which is obviously an achievement we are very proud of. But to your point, I think, in order for us to see exponential growth in the program, economic growth is really important for us to be able to create jobs. But that doesn't mean that we are not continuing our, we wake up every day and we try and make a difference. But obviously it is a tough economic circumstances for growth and for businesses to come on board. But we have very fortunately seen that over 1,400 active corporate partners have partnered with South Africa and are really trying to make a difference.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and for giving us more detail on the crisis of youth unemployment in the country and the initiatives that YES is currently undertaking to solve that problem. That was the COO of the Youth Unemployment Service, Leanne Emery Hunter. Now, on the international front, Volkswagen has been facing major criticism as it continues to operate in a Chinese region where there's been reports of discrimination among employees. And for more on that, it's over to our reporter.